Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Program Director. To our sister, the Speaker of the Rwandan Parliament, Donatille, the Minister of Gender of the Republic of Rwanda, the African Union Ministers of Gender and Women Affairs here present, and our sister, the Chair of the STC, and our sisters here in the podium from Velma to Erika to Binta to Silvana, and to my sisters up there and our brothers who are here, and civil society, and all of us who are here on this special occasion of the third high-level panel on gender. Let me welcome you very warmly to this immaculate city of Kigali. And of course, this panel takes place as we enter the second half of the African Women's Decade. I'm particularly pleased that we are gathered here, as all the speakers have said, in Rwanda, the world's leader in gender equality, women's empowerment, women's leadership, and political participation. But allow me, therefore, to express our profound gratitude to His Excellency, President Paul Kagame, and the government of the people of Rwanda for the warm welcome, the hospitality, since we arrived in the land of 1,000 hills and 1,000,000 possibilities. In fact, it is very heartwarming to meet here because you don't feel lonely. The leadership here, you find women all over. There is no sector where you can say, oh, I feel lonely here. Women are part of the work that is being done in Rwanda, as it should be. So Rwanda is showing us how it is possible. It's not something that is impossible. So thank you, Rwanda, for showing us that it can be done. And I hope that all the women who are here are saying, yes, it can be done and it will be done. The theme of this AU high-level panel, Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment, is the contribution of the Maputo Protocol on women's rights in achieving gender equality in Africa, stock-taking, opportunities, and accountability. As the transformation from the OAU to the African Union culminated in the adoption of the Constitutive Act of the AU in 2002, the women's movement on the continent recognized the need for an African gender platform building on the 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. The Maputo Protocol was very specific to the issues faced by Africans and African women and girls, finding African solutions to these challenges and binding the African governments. It became a tool for mobilization and organization for women in government and in parliament, in civil society, in business, academia, and unions, and a focus for campaigns on maternal and child mortality, and economic empowerment, on violence against women, on issues of representation, peace and security, and a number of other issues contained in the protocol. There is no question that since the protocol, as the Gender Directorate on the review of the Maputo Protocol will show, that we have made progress in a number of areas. And yet, we know that the UN Women last year noted, at the same pace of change since Beijing, it will take us, the world, 81 years to reach gender parity in the workplace, 75 years to reach equal pay for equal work, and 30 years for gender parity in political spheres. So none of us can wait that long. So we need to accelerate the pace. In reality, is that across the world, including in Africa, we are making progress, but at a snail's pace. And we seem to accept that this is how it will be. So the program director said we should challenge one another. And before you challenge me, I'll challenge you. So that we challenge. So my message to you today is that we must challenge ourselves to understand why progress is so slow and what needs to be done to change this situation. Let me start by quoting from one of the finest sons of this continent, Thomas Sankara, on International Women's Day in 1967, when he said, I quote, "We have no need of a feminized apparatus to bureaucratically manage women's lives or to issue sporadic statements about women's lives by smooth-talking functionaries. What we need are women who will fight because they know that without a fight, the old order will not be destroyed and no new order will be built. We are not looking to organize what exists, but to definitely destroy and replace it," close quote. It was a man who said it. What do we say? What do we say? The women's movement, emerging side by side with the anti-colonial and national liberation movements, always had to fight to have their voices heard, and for gender issues to be incorporated into the national and Pan-African struggles. Thus, thousands of women took their place side by side with the menfolk in the struggles for African independence. And of course, as Thelma said, PAU led from the front, and it was the first Pan-African organization before the OAU. The adoption of the Maputo Protocol in 2003 was a recognition that though women's position improved in post-independent Africa, this change has not gone deep enough, and that we need to do much, much more to build a non-sexist Africa and improve the conditions of millions of women and girls. The Maputo Protocol thus became a guide to action. Over the 13 years, we have made progress, as I said, raised awareness and ensured that women's issues are on the agenda of our continent and countries. However, this struggle is not yet over. In fact, we're at a crossroads where we can decide that we are satisfied with the slow pace of change, with tinkering at the margins, or to take a qualitative leap in women's situations that is so necessary to build the Africa we want, as envisaged by Agenda 2063. So, ladies and gentlemen and sisters, there are a number of issues that we need to address, which impact on our will to fight as we pursue the struggle to destroy the old order and patriarchy and build a non-sexist, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. And because we're challenging ourselves, I'm going to talk more about ourselves than about the men. Recognizing that men are very important and they need to be part of our struggle, but I want to concentrate on ourselves. The first is the tendency of women, because of our own socialization, not to rock the boat, to be the voice of compromise and to want to build consensus. Whilst this search for consensus and peace is laudable in many societal matters, it often means that when we get into government, parliament, organizations, institutions, or into business, we tend to conform, to seek to do well within the existing culture, and not to transform these institutions so that they also include and work for the other half of the population. So we need to attend to that. Yes, we must be consensus builders, but not at the expense of the women's struggle. Conforming is the path of least resistance. It's very easy to conform, whilst transforming means that we have to challenge the status quo we find in the institution we join. More often than not, when we do so, the issues that we challenge, because the system never before had to provide or cope with women, are either dismissed, trivialized when we raise them, or met with resistance. We also know that without challenge, we will not change the situation, nor open the doors for other women. This requires that women, when getting into positions of responsibility and leadership, we are conscious of the situation of women in the institution, how it works for and relate to women, and to work with other women to transform it. However, if we conform in order to fit in and make it in the men's world, we settle for less and celebrate the snail's pace of change, whilst it also opens space for backlash to the rights that we have won or thought we have won. A second challenge is the resistance to change that we meet from men. Because we know how many people will give up power, or how many kings will give up their thrones voluntarily. Very few, or none, as someone says. So, patriarchy is structured in the advantage of men. I don't think we should be shy to say that. It is structured to the advantage of men. In particular, to maintain control in public, economic, and family life, and even control of women's bodies. So, what do we do? And maybe just to emphasize this, I'll go back to the finest son of the soil, Thomas Sankara, and hear what he says about it. And I quote, "The man, no matter how oppressed he is, has another human being to oppress, his wife." It's not me saying it, it's Thomas Sankara. So, when women therefore fight for representation, it is seen as taking something away from men. What they, and often we ourselves, don't realize is that women are equal. We are equal in our own right. We are not taking anything from anyone. And of course, progressive men, like here in Rwanda, help women in their struggle. It's a struggle. Progressive men will help, like Thomas Sankara that I quoted. But But we shouldn't think that when we ask for 30% and we get it, it's because of the largesse of men, and that women's rights are not human rights. Women's rights are human rights. That is why Samora Machel, another finest sign of this soil, said, I quote, "The emancipation of women is not an act of charity." So we must understand that and take advantage of it. For example, when we talk about 30% representation, not even gender parity yet, some men bitterly complain that they are becoming an endangered species, when in fact they still hold 70% of positions, and they are less than 50% of the population. Even at the AU Commission, where women in the professional part are still holding 15% of positions, which is double what we found 4 years ago, but again, it's not fast enough. There is a bitter complaint from some men that they are being overlooked, and some have even said to me, should we change our sex and become women? Only because women are just 15%. So we must be aware that there will be resistance. But what we should not do, linked to this resistance, is that as women we should not collude in our second-class status, internalize our oppression and perpetuate the reproduction of oppressive gender roles and stereotypes in the next generations. These range from how we socialize our boys and girls to know their place, so the role we play as mothers, aunts, grandmothers in perpetuating harmful cultural practices. I'm quite sure that most of the harmful cultural practices would be gone if we were not colluding as women. If we were standing up for our girls and our daughters and our grandchildren, they would not be continuing today. But because we are part of it, in fact, culture tends to be passed on from one generation to the next by women. Harmful as it is, we pass it on. I think we should challenge ourselves and say, no, we are not going to do that as women. So our campaigns around these issues must therefore be about raising consciousness amongst women of all ages about the need to give girls better opportunities through education and help them to break the cycles of oppression. These issues have implications for the tactics and strategies of the women's and gender movement, highlighting the need for women who will continue the fight to adopt the right tactics. I think my sister there did allude to it, how the strategy must be to gain our equality. The strategy must be to destroy sexism. Tactics, yes, we can discuss tactics, how we do it, how we bring in men, progressive men, how we don't make them feel threatened and whatever, but we must just say it loud that the strategy is for equality. It means that as women's movement, we must be organized and be united, as I think Thelma said, because indeed, united we stand, divided we fall. It means that we must also build alliances with, mobilize and organize women in all sectors, and unite the wide range of grassroots women groups across the length and breadth of the continent. We did not just symbolically declare 2015 as the year of women's empowerment for the implementation of Agenda 63. We did it because decisive progress on the empowerment of women and girls and decisive progress in getting a critical mass of conscious women in government, parliament, business, the security forces, the judiciary, in peace negotiations, the boardrooms, universities, and professions will make a difference in whether we move ahead in Agenda 2063. As our sister Silvana there said, women's emancipation and ensuring that women participate in all walks of life is a smart thing to do. We know that societies that have progressed much more in gender equality are also societies that are more equal. They tend to be more peaceful. And so it's very important that we understand that, yes, it is our right, but it is the right thing to do for society, for the continent. I was discussing with the Gender Directorate, Director of Gender, and I was saying to her, every time we have to hold these meetings, we have to look for money here, there, we have to beg, we have to do all this. Why are we subjecting ourselves to this? Are we really incapable amongst ourselves and the millions of women out there of collecting money for our own work? I was saying to her, if we mobilized 1 million women across the continent and asked them to pay $1 a month, one, end of the year we'll have $12 million. But here, I'm sure you can give $100, $50. Why can't we say, enough of begging? Let's be proud African women that we are. Let's put the first dollar ourselves and then ask the neighbor to help. So there is a roundtable about financing, but I hope the solutions that will come will include us, ourselves, putting something. Because that's the only way we can be able to organize ourselves. That's the only way we can be able to help women out there who want to be in local government. That's the only way we can be able to be strong as women and do things that we are talking about, retiring the handheld tool, even if we just retire so many a year ourselves. So I would like to challenge you and challenge myself and all of us to say, let's help ourselves. Let's move out of this begging bowl mentality. Yes, let's ask for help. I was saying to them, to Phoebe the other day, you know, when your house burns, you don't stand at the gate and say, can you help me? My house is burning. You run and you shout, help, help, but you run with a bucket of water so that the neighbor sees you are doing something and they run to help you. But if they see you standing, they think you are just joking. Yes. So let's do that. And I'm sure the pace will start to pick up. And let's get progressive men to work with us, no problem. But let's help ourselves as well. So I hope that at the end of this high level, we'll come up with something of how we're going to do this. And we can start here. Of course, I also want to stress that we must be more assertive and more passionate about the importance of those issues close to our hearts and the well-being of our people: education, skills development, health, access to good nutrition, water, sanitation, transformation of agriculture, economic transformation, and to ensure a better life for the next generation of Africans. As women, we must, in large numbers, join all the movements and organizations to change our continent, including political parties, trade unions, business associations, civil society, faith-based organizations, so that we fight for women's empowerment and non-sexist in all spheres of society, and conscientize men and women and girls' empowerment on women and girls' empowerment for a more democratic, inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous societies. We often talk about Africa as a young continent. Conscientizing girls and young women and working with them is therefore critical to the sustainability of our cause. As a robust women's movement, we should be guided by our successes and not shy away from challenges. It is our collective duty not to let our struggles become routine, easy to dismiss, but instead to continue to renew and broaden the women's movement in order to realize radical and sustainable continental change. I was talking to young women, and I was saying to them, you know, young people by definition are radical. And they must be radical in a constructive way. Because if we cast our eyes back, when we were young, we were radical, but we were constructive, not destructive, constructive. And so there's nothing wrong in young women being radical constructively. And we must encourage them to participate. I'm just looking around. We are a young continent. I'm not sure what the average age in this hall is. The youth must be more than what they are, because they are in the majority. But because we don't have the means, we're not able to bring as many people as we can. That's why I was emphasizing the idea of also us contributing to the means so that we can do more. My sisters and brothers, these are some of the ideas that I thought I should just emphasize on what needs to be done to ensure that we do better and do it faster during the second half of the decade of African women. But before I take my seat, I would really like to thank you, all of you, and a lot of others who are not in this room, for the support that you have given us during these last 4 years. But actually, not only giving us during the last 4 years, if it wasn't to a large measure the work of women, I probably wouldn't be standing here. So I'd like to thank you. knowing full well that our struggle to destroy the old order and to build a new, which is a non-sexist continent, must continue, and we must become more assertive and inclusive. And notice that I'm not saying goodbye. I will not say goodbye to you, because I'll be with you. Whether you invite me or you don't next year, I'll be with you. Because all of us, it doesn't matter where we are, what position we hold, what remains, we will always be women. So, a luta continua. Victoria Essert. So thank you very much. I thank you for all the support. And now I must be on the other side and support those who will be coming in and support the struggle in general. So, GMAC, here I come. Thank you.
Let's hear the roar, please. Yes. Be seated. Please be seated.